To answer a question that is already answered in our classical tradition, that's easy because we just open a book and the answer is right there. Because pornography is such a modern phenomenon, we don't find the answer right there. Now, everyone will agree that pornography is reprehensible. It's, morally this is so wrong that one doesn't have to be a Muslim to recognize that this is very bad. So Muslims and non-Muslims alike will recognize that this is an evil in society and a shameful aspect of modern society. And whereas laws will be drawn up to protect children from that whole industry, and nonetheless, we recognize that some people may be in that industry, for reasons which are not so much within their control. They're pressed and drawn into it and so on for so many different reasons. So we all want to see an end to that. But then if we're asking, is it a major sin? Now we're asking about a certain classical Islamic category, and we have to go back to our classical books and find out about this categorization. So I'll give you a sort of conclusion first, and then we will try to unpack it and see, how that conclusion is reached. There is a website with the URL something like islamqa.info. This is a site on which you will find many traditional answers to questions about Islam. In fact, many fatwas are given on that site, and typically the mufti or the scholar will go into the Quran and go into the records of hadith and what classical scholars have said and so on. So often when I want to know what the classical scholars have said about a subject, that's one of my first stops, because I know I'll find the information there. If there's a hadith on a question, I know it'll be there. So one of the puzzling issues, Safiya, is that though there are hadiths which condemn, like people, for example, talking about their private relations. There's a hadith says a man is reprehensible if he has intimacy with his wife and then he goes and he talks to others about what he did. So just this talking is obviously revealing something. This is in the realm of erotic literature, you might say. And there must have been some such literature around at the time, because even before Islam, we know that the Kama Sutras are very old. But there is, I'm not aware of anything either from this site that I was referring to or anywhere else where there was such a condemnation of someone, having some such literature, passing it around, reading it, looking at it, or anything of this nature. Anyway, coming back to this site, what they have said in essence is that there is a difference between major sins and minor sins, and that difference is important because the Quran says that if you stay away from the major sins, God is going to forgive the rest, which means the minor sins. So we need to know which are the major ones. And there's a hadith that lists 7 major sins, but they're very venial sins, like shirk, which is top of the list, associating partners with God, and adultery and murder and so on.
Similar to the 10 Commandments. Then.
Yes, yes. And then scholars realize that, the major sins must be more than just these. So anything that's sort of like of the same category, resembling these and so on, they think must be major sins. But more than this, if the Quran or an authentic narrative from the Prophet, peace be upon him, condemns a sin so severely as to, for example, mention a punishment in the life hereafter for such and such a crime, then these are all considered to be major sins. One of the great scholars of the Islamic tradition, known as Al-Zahabi, the golden one, that's what his name literally means, he compiled a book that lists 70 major sins. But in perusing that book, I also, again, do not recall like something that we could classify as pornography, specifically as we know it in our modern times. Coming back again to this website, which I keep coming back to, in essence, what they have said is that if somebody, just glanced at something once or, on occasion or something like this, or one is just simply drawn into something at the moment, but one does not repeat that, it's classified as a minor sin. But if one goes back to it again and again, one is habitual at doing that, then it becomes a major sin. But of course, one should not get into that at all. But, when we think about the fatwas on this question, we also think about how widespread the issue is. And we don't want to give a verdict that will leave people in despair. If a thing becomes so widespread, people are so easily drawn into it and so on, we don't want them to feel, oh man, at the end of the day, no matter what I do, I can't be right before God because I have this problem or whatever. Mm-hmm. So we do recommend for people to get treatment if they are suffering from an addiction, whether to this or something else. And we do warn Muslims to stay away from every sin, whether major or minor. But when the question is asked and we are forced to make this differentiation between the major and minor, this is the result in a fatwa such as that one.
Thank you for sharing that experience.
You're welcome.
If you enjoyed this video, click like and subscribe. And please donate to support our work at QuranSpeaks.com.